Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Thom King, who's the founder of Keto. Thom, welcome to the program.
Mike, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and it's always nice to be able to chat with a fellow Coloradoan.
Yes, we were chatting a minute ago about how we both love this wonderful state, so that's really cool. And I love the brand name. I know this is a subsidiary of your main company, but Keto, because how much more precise can you get? I mean, it really reminds me of some of those programs you saw. I forget whether this is the exact one, but Fit to Fat and Fat to Fit, where the guy gained like, I don't know, 100 pounds. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that just kind of really dials in your target audience. So I want to dive into that and see what your entrepreneurial journey has been and is projected to be, because I know that you're a serial entrepreneur, and it's not like, hey, just a couple more years, I'm done. So it always evolves every day. So give us a little bit of background. What actually one day led you to get entrepreneurial, and more importantly, entrepreneurial in the food industry?
Well, that's a great question. The first thing I'd like to do, though, first is acknowledge Drew Manning. He's the one who's doing the Fit to Fat, and he's now doing Fit to Fat 40, because he just turned 40, and he's gained like about 50 pounds over a 3-month period, and it just has been, a very courageous thing that he's doing, and he's had a lot of problems, and it's interesting because he's really, he's coming from the standpoint of fitness and health from a place of compassion, and I think that is super key, and that kind of leads me right into my why about being an entrepreneur. And I would say my first entrepreneurial journey, was when I was in college, and I couldn't seem to hold down a job because I was infinitely lazy. And so I was just laying around my parents' house when my dad wasn't around, and a guy knocked on the door and served my mom legal papers. And I was really intrigued with that. Like, hey, what did you do? Are you like a sheriff or something? And so he, so I asked him if I could ride with him, and I rode around, and I'm like, wow, this is an interesting sort of fun job. And I ended up working the entire summer for the guy. Huh. And at the end of the summer, he had spent all of the money on drugs. So I didn't have any money. I had no money for college. I had nothing, and not even able to make my car payments and stuff. And I came home, and I was just destroyed. Like, what am I going to do? Because I couldn't move back home. It wasn't an option for me. And my mom told me, hey, you come from a long line of entrepreneurs. You know all of his customers. You've been literally running his business. Why don't you start your own business? Yeah. And she said, the sky's the limit for you. And the first business that I ever started was called STL Services, Sky's the Limit. So I owe everything to my mom, because, she showed me the encouragement and nurturing to really propel me to, believe in myself that I could really, be part of a legacy that my family has had of entrepreneurs. And that was my very first business that paid for college. It paid for a condo, when I was 24 years old, and it was, it was really great. And then the second business I started, one of my degrees is in real estate, and I dabbled in real estate, and then the market crashed, and I lost everything. And I was basically back to zero, and packed up my bags and slept on a friend of mine's couch in Arizona. And, I struggled there until I ran into this man. His name was Jim May, and he had just come back from Paraguay, and he had all these jars of different leaves and herbs and stuff, and he opened one of the jars, and he's like, try this out. And it was like this dark green paste, and I tasted it, and it was sweet. It was probably 25 times sweeter than sugar. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? Is this like sugar mixed with something? And he said, no, this is the stevia leaf. And that was when I took the proverbial red pill and went down the rabbit hole with it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, somebody can do something with this. Like, my goal will be to take this sweet leaf and have it be, a natural version of aspartame. And that was the beginning, of this journey.
That's awesome. And, I want to go back just a couple steps to your mom.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in time, she could have easily have said, well, look at how stinky life is. I can tell you stories, son, and welcome to the real world, and just get out there and get yourself a job and dust yourself off. But guess what she did? She gave you encouragement. She said, sky's the limit. She gave you hope and a positive outlook. And I think that if we could go back in time and change those statements and that mentality, you might not be sitting here right now with your experiences. And I think that the takeaway is, look at the power that parents, that people even, friends or neighbors or relatives have in someone's life to change that mindset and thinking and possibility and all of that. We can get into personal development, but from right there, wow, thanks, Mom. You've always supported me, but you always do hear the stories about, oh, you'll never amount to anything. And you know that it's not every parent that does that. So what a great turning point for you to have a mom that did that, said that, supported you, and then, guided you down that path.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That's super cool of you to say. I'm a person who journals every day. And, part of my journaling process is, what are the things that I'm grateful for? And so my mom passed away 7 years ago. And I mean, there's not a day that doesn't go by that, I don't miss her. And, the interesting thing is part of my journaling process is where, I express the gratitude, and she is at the top of the list. So, I'm grateful for her encouragement. I'm grateful for, her nurturing. And all of the love that she poured into me, because, to sort of juxtapose my relationship between my mom and my dad was one of those naysayers. Like, he literally told me, he's like, you're not going to be anything more than a ditch digger your entire life. And my mom on the other side said, you're capable of doing anything. And so, really, I think that both might be kind of interesting things to think about, because, my mom gave me the nourishment and the encouragement to be, an entrepreneur. But with that encouragement, when my dad said, you're never going to be nothing but a ditch digger, my attitude was, well, be that as it may, I will be the best ditch digger there ever was.
Yeah, but, something was ingrained in you to just have his, admonitions go in one ear and out the other, and latch on to your mom's, positive, uplifting admonitions. Because so very frequently, people today, get excited about something. They tell two people, one person's like, yeah, that's awesome. The next person's like, really? That's dumb. And you're like, yeah, I thought so. So, there is that aspect too, that you had a kind of a wired in predisposition to entrepreneurial or positive mental attitude, so that your dad's comments didn't totally, not take the wind out of your sails.
Yeah, it didn't. I can't say that. It did sometimes, but it didn't dominate my life.
But not overall, exactly.
Right. And I think that, honestly, like, for me, that sort of conflict between me and my dad is something I'm also grateful for, because it put in that little seed that really propelled me into, working on self-improvement, like reading books on self-improvement, reading books on mindset, almost to a point to where it was an obsession with me, And, my path and my growth, like I've had, people on podcasts and people that meet me, say, "Oh man, you totally have your act together, and yeah, you really made it." And what's funny to me is like I don't ever see that. Like I always see myself as, a work in progress and a person in need of improvement on a continual basis. So I would say that if somebody really ventures into the process of changing their mindset, understands that it's a process, that there's no destination. Like life isn't a destination. Our destination is 6 feet underground. It's like the time, between that brief, sacred, rare time that we have to continually improve the quality of our life. And that is 100% mindset, like how you see the world, like how you see experiences, whether they're joyful or challenging. You should take those experiences, and use them to learn, grow, become wiser, stronger person.
Well, and then, you get to the point where you mentioned about your real estate and the bottom dropped out. Well, there might have been economic reasons for that. There might have been personal decisions you made that, oops, I shouldn't have. But it's kind of like the old saying goes, you either win or and then the crowd goes lose. And you're like, no, you win or you learn. Well, what happened during that time? What did you learn? Well, I could have done this differently. I could have helped that aspect because the market did this and that and the other. But boy, I could have done this in my next venture. I'm going to. So you're always, it's like Tony Robbins talks about, constant and never-ending improvement. You have to.
I love Tony Robbins. Yeah, I mean that is 100% fact. I mean, and I do live through and I mean it's part of my hour of power, which also I've stolen from Tony Robbins.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so now let's move into you had the guy with the stevia plant, and you're like, interesting. So what led you to go, I need to start a food company?
Well, what's interesting is I've kind of always battled, like with my weight. Like it fluctuates a lot. It's up, it's down, and and I was a terrible sugar addict when I was in college, like terrible. Like I would pour basically a bag of M&Ms in a can of Pepsi because Pepsi just wasn't quite sweet enough.
You're like Elf on the movie Elf.
It was like, it was really bad. And so, I was always trying to cut sugar out of my life, but there was only, sort of chemically based synthetic compounds for that. And then when I ran into this guy, Jim Main, he showed me stevia. I was like, this is unbelievable. What is this? And I mean, I had to understand the science of it. Like I had to understand the science of how those molecules in there work. And that was sort of the foundation of building my companies. Like I discovered, a way that we could extract the sweet constituents out of the leaves using hot water. And, I spent a lot of time in research and development because the stevia business and Icon Foods were like at that time my side hustle because I worked in the entertainment industry and really, wanted to get out of it and get into something that gives back. And from my perspective, cutting sugar out of people's lives and giving them options, giving them easy options, was part of my process of being able to just at least make a dent in metabolic disease like diabetes and obesity.
And probably at that time, you didn't even know how vast that would be because you just thought, what a cool product. You didn't know how vast it would be with the keto craze, the diabetes, the lifestyle, and all of that. You just knew there's something here, and you just kind of put one foot in front of the other. Yeah,
and I got knocked on my ass a lot too. So it just didn't hey, this is a sweetener revolution, and I'm going to lead it. It was, there were times when, the FDA wouldn't allow it into the country and having to work with a lot of bureaucratic BS. So then I ran out of money. And I didn't have any money left to pay my house payment. So I had to go to my dad and grovel, and say, look, I need to borrow some money so I don't lose my house. And, Yeah, I mean, and he was cool about it. He loaned me the money, and yeah, within a year, I had paid him back 100% of the money plus interest. And in 2008, a mega food company called Cargill was able to lobby the FDA to allow stevia to be used in food production. And
Wow.
that overnight things changed. Like,
Yeah.
I went from, shipping kilos and bottles of stevia to shipping truckloads to sports nutrition companies. And that was the point to where it's like, okay, I made it. I got this. Now I just need to.
Because in reality, that right there gave, the open door and legal and all that. I get that, but also it gave validation, because at that point probably what is that? No, it was new, right? So it gave this validation to people going, okay, I'm going to sip and take notice here. So this thing now has gotten the thumbs up from. So then it just kind of blossomed on what work you had already done. Now, if you had waited for that time and then like, okay, well, here's my product, then you would have been behind the curve.
Yeah, and I mean that's very true. And I've always found, that I've been a little ahead of the curve, and maybe too much so, because there's been a lot of other compounds that I started working with before anybody was, interested in working with them, because we started working with another sweetener called monk fruit that didn't really have market adoption, and then we started working with another product called erythritol. Didn't really have market adoption yet, and now recently, I'd say 4 years ago, I started working with another sweetener called allulose, and just now allulose is becoming more prevalent in food production. So I think that like Wayne Gretzky's philosophy of hockey.
I was literally going to say, so you're skating to where the puck's going.
I skated to where the puck goes, and that's one thing that I think that, when I work on the innovation of our company, that's one thing that I always keep in mind. It's like, where's that puck going? Let's skate to where it's going. And get ahead of these trends.
Exactly. Well, let's wrap up with one of the points you briefly mentioned, which is the giving back. So what is your focus and your approach on giving back and kind of, CSR, corporate social responsibility?
Yeah. So from two standpoints, I mean, with Icon Foods, which is, our food company, our ingredient company, we support education, because I think that education is one of the best things to give back to, because it helps grow children, and children are our future. So with the Icon Foods, we very much focus on that. With my side hustle, Saigon Keto, with the ketogenic products, we are very engaged in donating product to families that have children that are, suffering from type 1 diabetes, and also, families that are using ketogenic diet as a modality for treating seizures. We just give product to them, and that makes me feel really good, because there's a place called the Charlie Foundation, and the Charlie Foundation works with children that have epilepsy, and anything that we can do to promote and help the Charlie Foundation is, really, I feel is like giving back, because, epilepsy in children and treating them with heavy medications, it just blots out their childhood. But if they can control their seizures, using food and diet, as a method, it really improves the quality of their life. And so, my why behind everything I do is just to, tackling metabolic disease and, and helping people live fuller, richer lives.
That's awesome. And I think that's kind of like you mentioned, my why behind doing things. And obviously you need to turn a profit, you need to and take care of employees, all of those things. But when that kind of broader reaching thing is a portion of some of your success, it just really helps to keep that focus there. So I love that so much. So Thom, thank you for coming on the show. What is the best way people can learn more about you, your companies, and your products?
Well, if you go to iconfoods.com or find us on LinkedIn, you can see like some of the projects that we're working on, some of the formulations. If you want to see my side hustle and the thing that keeps me thriving, go to Guy Gone Keto. So go to guygoneketo.com. You can find me on any of the socials at Guy Gone Keto. Want a copy of my book, Guy Gone Keto? Shoot me a direct message. I'll send you one. And
awesome.
That's the best way to find me.
I will make sure to put that into the show notes. And thanks a million for coming on today.
Mike, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Sure.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.